Every choice builds character. On the Virtuosity podcast, we explore how to make every day a rep toward excellence. I'm Corey, your host and co-founder of Virtuosity. My journey into character development began in sport, where I discovered that strengthening my character didn't just improve my performance, it transformed my entire life. Since then, I've been gripped with understanding how we can intentionally build character to fuel both personal and professional success. At Virtuosity, we believe character is like a muscle. It needs consistent training. That's why we've built a research-based system that acts as your character gym, making character development practical, scalable, and accessible, even within the largest organizations. On this podcast, we sit down with participants from our flagship Virtuosity program, where individuals commit to a full year of daily character development powered by Virtuosity. Our guests will share why character matters to them, how they're applying it in their personal and professional lives, and the insights they've gained along the way. We hope these conversations challenge, inspire, and equip you with new ways to integrate character into your own journey. Subscribe to stay up to date with our weekly episodes, and if something resonates, share it with your friends and colleagues. Ready to start your own Virtuosity journey? Download the Virtuosity Character app or visit virtuositycharacter.ca to learn more. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 14th episode of the Virtuosity podcast. If you're new, I encourage you to check out our launch episode with Mary Crossan for a powerful introduction to the series. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Phil Desmarais as our guest. Phil serves as the commanding officer of the Canadian North American Aerospace Defense Command Space Detachment. With over 25 years of experience in air and space operations, command and control, and military instruction, he brings a wealth of expertise to the evolving domain of space defense. A graduate of the Royal Military College and the Canadian Forces College, Phil holds a Master of Defense Studies and has held key positions across North America, including the Canadian Air Defense Sector, Cavalier AFS, and Vandenberg SFB, and 1 Canadian Air Division headquarters in Winnipeg, Manitoba. He is a proponent of productive disruption, advocating for self-awareness and leadership development. He is also a musician, outdoor enthusiast, and lifelong learner who strives to balance his professional life with a rich family life. Well, welcome, Phil, to the Virtuosity podcast. Super excited to unpack all of the pioneering efforts you're doing with your team. And so, yeah, really excited for that. But the question that I always start by asking all of our guests is, why does character matter to you?
Thanks, Corey, and it's awesome to be here. And I have the benefit and the downside of having listened to the podcast all year so far and knowing this question was coming and thinking and obsessing over how I would answer it, because there's been a lot of great answers to that question so far. So what I think, and I'll try to succinct the answer that I would come up with is that I have come up with is that people that rely on me deserve a better version of me and an ever evolving version of me. So and through going through my character journey over the last couple of years and with and more specifically and definitely with an accelerated time frame of having done Virtuosity this year, I think that it's reflecting back, that definitely hasn't been the case over my years in my personal and professional life. So this has become really meaningful to me to make sure that I'm always doing something to be better than I was before for the people that depend on me and rely on me. And then that obviously goes, transfers across personal life, professional life. It doesn't matter which context. There are a lot of people that depend on me. And if I'm not doing the best that I can to be better, then, I'm letting them down. And I definitely think in the past that I have let people down. So I through going through this and having the benefit of retrospect through the lens of the leader character framework now, I definitely see some areas where I can continue to do better. So that's the short answer, but I have so many thoughts on why this is important and how this is important that I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah. So why don't we start by exploring what it is that you are doing, because there's a lot going on here. So of course you are a participant in the Virtuosity program this year, but you're not just doing it for your own personal development. You've brought in a few people on your team to really take this and be able to then bring it to the rest of your larger team. And for those listening too, we've actually found this to be a really effective model in general, that when you invest in development and learning for yourself, but you're tasked to then train other people for it, it really deepens your commitment to what it is that you're doing. But you are doing some really pioneering efforts. This is the first time that people are really training on Virtuosity and then bringing it to the rest of their team. So why don't you walk us through what your kind of aspirations were around that, why you think it's important, and how you're actually doing that?
Mm-hmm. It's been a busy year. It's been an exciting year for sure. And having not really sure where it was going to go when we started in January, it was not unlike just jumping into character development itself. You're taking a bit of a leap of faith and trusting that it will go somewhere positive. And that's a similar approach to what we did with the team as well. So yeah, and it's just a couple throughout the year, there are things that I've heard throughout our sessions and through the conversations with you and Mary that have just really stuck. And one of Mary's go-tos, is who are you becoming while you're busy doing, is just such a anchor point for me to be able to go back to why it's important for me to do this for myself, and then why it's important. One of the reasons certainly why it's important for us to bring this into the team, because across the Canadian Armed Forces is just insanely busy. And I know everybody's busy everywhere, but that just really hits home when you consider, as we've discussed many times throughout the year, that your character is changing one way or the other, whether you do it intentionally or not. So that just really is such a powerful reminder for me to keep going at it. The other one I like to go back to, and has kind of become part of my I guess my own sort of philosophy for continuing to pursue self-development, is what got you here won't get you there. And that's a book, I think, by Marshall Goldsmith, which I've not read, but I've heard it phrased in different ways. But essentially, this idea of evolution is just so important to keep up to date with certainly the security and defense environment that we deal with in the world today. And certainly, and I can apply that into so many different parts of my life, that what got me here as a husband, as a father, as a CAF member, as an officer, now as a commanding officer, will not get me to the next wherever that is. So I keep that as a really front of mind sort of idea for my approach. And then sort of to tack onto that is what we learned throughout our humility session earlier this year, where basically certainty ends growth. So that was another thing that really stuck with me, that as soon as I feel like I'm certain of something, then that's a cue to kind of reevaluate that, and to remember that what got me here won't get me there. So a lot of that led in, sort of fell into my cauldron of a brain that is thinking of way too many things at once a lot of times. But the confluence of the circumstances that led me to be where I am in my position, my role, sort of me being here with what's got me to this point, in this moment, in this job, with everything that's going on, led me to sort of come to the conclusion, at least in my own mind, that we needed to do something, and that something was developing character. So we're very lucky, within the Canadian Armed Forces to have a high level ethos and leadership doctrine that specifically includes the Ivy Leader Character Framework. So I didn't have to really dig or invent anything or turn over too many stones to find what it is that would help me to be able to embark on this journey. So the idea that folks are in the military or in service of Canada, this is part of our indoctrination into the CAF from very early on, that it's service before self, and this idea of being in service of something is not unique to the military for sure, but it's a core value for us. So being in service of something, being in service of Canada, those people that do that are owed the highest level of leadership that they can get, and because we've all signed the dotted line, as it's called, to be able to ultimately we could be putting our lives on the line for our country. So anything less than world-class leadership is unacceptable. So we and unfortunately, that's certainly we're not immune to that. So, but we can definitely do things now intentionally to make sure that we have that level of leadership, which is why this is so important to be able to have this roadmap, to be able to develop it in a way that is allows us to become better leaders and to become better a better armed forces overall. Because that's where when the rubber meets the road for the military in the world today, there's a really there's global instability, there's conflicts around the world, there's no shortage of bad news if you look at the news, and we had when you add that with what our ethos and leadership doctrine says, where we talk about competence and commitment along with character, as the research has shown through Ivy, we are really good at competence. We have a commitment to lead for sure, but we have not had deliberate and intentional character development. So that was a huge gap in where I thought we needed to be able to close to get to where we need to be a modern and have a competitive, or in our case, operational advantage over our adversaries, because the adversaries are out there, and we can't just rely on our three oceans to protect us anymore. We talk about it a lot in Canada now, Arctic sovereignty and so on. We have to be able to be dynamic and make quick decisions and operate under the highest levels of stress that are expected of anybody, really. That's what the military is there for. That's why we have it, and that's what we're expected to do. So if you walk that back from there, you end up at judgment to make better decisions, and then you reverse, you keep walking it back, and then we're into the remaining 10 dimensions. So, and then we have a way to do that with the associated behaviors to practice it and get better at it. So here we are. I've kind of thought through this in my head, and I'm put in a position where I'm a commanding officer of a unit, and I have the ability, and I've thought through this enough, and I have the authority, and I have the influence. I think I did, at least. I certainly had the authority, because that's non-negotiable, but whether I had the influence or not remains to be seen. And then we were able to put into place a unit development program that encompassed character, competence, commitment, to really capture things that we were already doing in some cases. And that's what I really liked about the broader framework of the 3 C's, is that it allows you to contextualize things you're perhaps already doing. Like many sectors that have been looked at through the work that Ivy's done, competence is typically not the gap. So, and the military was no different. We have excellent training, we have excellent courses, and we were able to train people well to do their assigned tasks and duties in the military. So we just captured things we were already doing, ways in which we were training people formally for operational jobs and operational tasks, and sort of bucket that under competence. So then we had and under the character column we had nothing. So we had to do that was not acceptable, as I kind of already described. So we had to put something there, and that's where through my, I guess, very, very limited familiarity with the framework and leader character at the time, a little over a year ago, I was able to bring in a colleague and leader character practitioner down to our unit when we had our annual get together, and give an intro and say, hey, tell us, spread the good word, tell us what's going on with leader character, what's it all about. And then that sort of precipitated sort of an eye-opening. It was once you the way I felt is that once you see this, you can't unsee it, and once you are aware of the gaps, you can't not do anything about it. You have to, there's a clear call to action in our ethos and leadership doctrine, and this is clearly stated as one of the ways in which we will do that. So for me, it was just, as not a math person at all, it was 1 + 1 = 2. So I'm like, okay, gap plus leader character equals do something. So then we stepped forward on something, and we got in touch with Mary, and then very shortly thereafter yourself, to be able to talk through how we would implement something for leader character. I brought my leadership team in on this. They were incredibly supportive, and sort of shared, once I kind of walked the dog a little bit, they were able to see what I was seeing, and acknowledge that I was only a little bit crazy. So we kind of came up with a unit level game plan with supported by you and Mary, to be able to put something into place to intentionally develop lead character. And that looked like the initial piece was some courseware, some content that's available through our online learning platform, that based upon the Ivy lead character framework. that folks were able to access, and we essentially would have monthly conversations around that. So the expectation was that you would complete a module of this online learning, which corresponded to one of the character dimensions. And then we essentially use a sort of observe and identify approach to discussing the dimension. And all the while, since January, as you mentioned earlier, there was myself and 5 other members of our unit that registered for your Virtuosity program, so that we could be ever so slightly ahead of what we were going to then turn around and share with the team. So it was a train the trainer approach, which I think has been working well. I think we probably meet the minimum threshold for how much is in our brains before we should be sharing it, because we're far from experts in it. But we had the commitment around it, and we knew enough to be dangerous, and anything was better than what we were doing. So that's where we moved out on, sort of starting with Virtuosity for the leadership team, and then moving into a sort of gap program to be able to use some existing content that we had within our defense learning environment. And then also in considering, how the regular annual attrition of through our posting cycle, we decided to go with take the next step, which was a fairly significant step, from sort of 0 to monthly to then full Virtuosity daily. We took that leap in August, and we've now had the unit as an organizational sort of account, and as an integral unit, everybody using Virtuosity as the tool. So our tool evolved from sort of a couple of PowerPoints a year ago to our defense learning, environment with some, asynchronous material, to the app on the phone and daily character development. So that is as I knew I would do, that was a really, really long answer to a question, but I think that gets us to where we are today. And so from August till now, and then we're talking in November here. So that's how long we've been onboarding and using Virtuosity as the means to do our intentional character development, to close that gap between competence and character, and with the aim really to have an operational advantage at the leadership, with the leadership of everybody on the team, because we do consider everybody to be a leader in their own capacity. And that's ultimately where we're trying to get to, is to have world-class leadership across the CAF. So that's what I think about that.
That's a great overview. It gives a lot of background, and the pioneering piece of this is that you've been met with a lot of challenges that I think have given us actually a lot of innovative solutions. And so I'm going to get to that in a second, but I just wanted to go back to one of the first things that you said when I asked the question was really around the question that Mary poses a lot: who are you becoming while you're busy doing? And I just wanted to flag for the listeners that aren't able to see you, even right now, you're doing this podcast episode as you're walking on a treadmill, which I absolutely love. You and your team are always walking on treadmills as you're doing these calls. And I think that's a perfect example of how can you activate character while you're doing the things that you're already doing. How can you make the most out of your time? And so, yeah, I just thought that was such a perfect example that you're doing that.
That's hilarious. But yeah, when I'm sauntering through hyperspace, because you also can't see the light speed spaceship as my team's default background.
Yeah. Okay. So the challenges, and I wanted to, there was something that you were saying at the end there. Oh yeah. So some of the challenges, I wanted you to explore some of those challenges, and I wanted to even just start off with the pioneering effort that you have been doing. And you were talking about, just barely being in front of what you were learning. Mm-hmm. And one of the great innovations that's come out of the work that you're doing is the fact that we've now created these introductory videos to help with the train the trainer model. So before your team started, we were trying to equip you to do all of the theory and bring the theory, the complex theory, to your teams. But seeing that could be challenging, or even thinking about how to use the best amount of time with the sessions that you're doing, we've now created introductory videos that help in that. So that's just one example of how we've seen the challenges that you've been facing, and then we've been innovative to try and solve some of those. So let's start off with, you can start off with challenges and move into the solutions if you want, or we can just start with challenges. But yeah, start sharing maybe some of those challenges that you've been facing and doing, and bringing this to your team.
Yeah, it's definitely not been without its challenges. It's So for I'm assuming most people, except for the people that are on my leadership team that are on Virtuosity with us this year, everybody else probably doesn't know how we're set up as a unit, and it is, arguably one of the more challenging ways in which you could try and implement a leader character development initiative like we're doing. So, but it's not unique. It's not special. We're not that different. It's just different than a lot of Canadian Armed Forces units. So I was thinking about this, and we're not really different in that sense from how you're running your Virtuosity program. We are a geographically distributed team with a couple of concentrations of a few more folks than others, and then with another half a dozen locations with twos and threes spread across the continental U.S., Alaska, and Greenland. So we have the the tyranny of time zones. We have the tyranny of shift work. We have just that geographical separation that for anything just makes it a little bit harder to communicate with folks and to deliver intent, to deliver support as we're trying to onboard ambitious new initiatives. And that is ultimately the thing that we wrestle with every single day, whether it's for leader character development or whether it's just for trying to help someone through an administrative issue or something at their location. So that really adds a lot of complexity to what we're trying to do. And that's closely connected to the, to the communication piece, which is something we talk about a lot. Again, we had already talked about this a lot, and we're pretty sensitive to the volume and the way in which we communicate with our team. There's only so many emails that people can receive and absorb in a day. There's only so many Teams messages or posts on the Teams channel that we can do. There's only so many opportunities in the day just to connect over the phone or over a Teams call, just with how schedules more often than not don't overlap. So we really it was surprising, not surprising, that it's taking longer than maybe is optimal, but for valid reasons for us to get up onto where everything is sort of clicking and rolling. So we've been really trying to just come up with different ways to present the information, to deliver intent, to support people as they try and get on board with this. And the videos were a great innovation that certainly helps with that. Not only did it alleviate us from trying to sound as smart as you and Mary are on this stuff, we'd only fake it until we make it so much. So it would become readily apparent that we didn't really know what we were talking about, and there's obviously a cost to that. We don't want to come across as thinking we know what we were doing when we actually are essentially just as new as everybody else in our unit. So there was so we had to, at the time we didn't know we were doing it, but we were activating some humility there with the team to be able to make sure that we were not presenting this as the answer, and that we were supposedly experts in this. So because we're decidedly not. We're students of it as much as anybody else in our unit is. So I mean, you can kind of bucket a lot of that under just communication and just the amount of through some change management training that I've done. There's an adage or a rule, I guess, that if it takes 7 different ways and 7 times for someone to really sort of start to hoist aboard the change you're trying to implement. And the more you're distributed, the more your schedules are out of sync, the harder that becomes. So we struggle with that for sure. The big one, I guess the elephant in the room perhaps, is just habit change in general. And that is just so hard. And it's even harder to do when you layer on a geographically dispersed, team. So we only get to be in person with each other. And again, the best we can ever hope for is maybe 90% of our folks in the same room at the same time for a few days. That's only once a year. So we just had that a couple weeks back. So we really wanted to do as much as we could, along with the other things that we do when we're all together, to really try and get that support for our team to solve issues and to think through challenges, and to collaborate with you and Mary on some of those barriers so that we can work through, and get more folks on a more regular engagement pattern. Because we know, as you've shown with the research, is that the best case for success is daily development. Not that anything else is still not valuable, but if we're trying to really meaningfully and sustainably and permanently move the needle on strengthening character, daily development is the gold standard. So again, for the reasons I described earlier, I think you can see why I wanted to go gold standard and not just to kind of incrementally creep away at this. It's a big jump, and it's a difficult jump, and we're still living through the challenges ourselves, those of us that are on Virtuosity, of slightly ahead of the team, but I don't have it figured out either, as far as having the full habit change sort of under wraps. There's a lot of habit change. There's only so much habit change you can do. Any one person can do. I would offer. I would suggest. So I know for me, this year it's been a year of habit change, largely under Vigorous, where I've really worked hard at my nutrition and exercise and sleep. And there's only so much capacity in the day to habit change, everything you're doing. So with what I had left in the tank, for habit change, for character development more broadly, through all of the behaviors that we're looking at throughout the year, I think there's a little bit left on the table, or there's only so much I can do. But I have noticed, and again, through my own personal sort of journey this year, with a really heavy emphasis on Vigorous, once you see the shift start to happen in your own well-being and health and physical fitness level and quality of sleep and so on, it opens up the ability to do more of the rest of the things. So just as much as when we talked about temperance, and Mary talked about it as being sort of a portal through which you can access the remaining dimensions, then there's that. In my experience, that has been very closely connected to Vigorous, and it's physiologically really difficult to get to temperance if you don't have the Vigorous sort of things under control. So that's been a huge thing for me, and for whatever anybody else is going through on the team, and whatever they're trying to manage, personally and professionally with their families and so on. There's only so much habit change you can realistically expect someone to do. So that is still a huge challenge. And then we chatted a little bit about it the other day. Like, there's no silver bullet. I don't know that there's an answer out there, but we're trying to just keep leaning forward on that and keeping at it to be able to support the team for whenever they need that support, to be able to continue to strive towards this model of daily character development. So that's kind of where we're at as far as the main challenges, and it's been exciting we certainly didn't set off on this to be pioneers or to do pioneering work. It was just simply a basic math problem in my brain. There was a gap, we needed to close it. This is the thing, let's do the thing. So it's been really exciting to learn that it is considered to be pioneering, and that it is helping the broader vision of bringing character leadership to the world, really. So we're super excited to be part of that, and to work with you and Mary and the rest of the broader team on these efforts. So it's been fun.
Well, yeah, it's very pioneering, and I'm glad that you started talking about your own character, because in a minute I will ask you to think about what has been the character required of you to be able to pioneer something like this. But before we get to that, I do want to explore some of the strategies that you have used to to address these challenges. And the biggest one that I've absolutely loved coming out of this, and this was something especially in our last session where we were kind of thinking about what was coming next for your team, is you've kept on coming up with this term, how do we make character mission critical? And I've loved that term, and it's something that we've now started taking to our other programs, because we've always known that, we're doing character development for something. While it is great to just develop your character for the sake of character development, how can we actually link it to something? And so Mary often talks about how do we pair character and competence together. And so this mission critical link is really about pairing the character with the competence of your organization. And you're talking about similarities between your program and Virtuosity program in terms of geographical differences, but something that's very different is that the people joining the Virtuosity program are self-selecting into it. Whereas with your program, you've decided to mandate it, which is something that I think for the listeners is always a challenging decision to make, whether you mandate something or not. And while we've kind of hummed and hawed about different approaches to that, if you do think about character as being mission critical, which it for sure is, you talk about world-class leadership. Character is often the issue around poor judgment and decision making. So we feel more confident in making it mandatory. But this twinning around character and competence making character mission critical, you actually had a very specific scenario too, where you had everyone together, and you'd use behavioral forecasting in a way that made it very mission critical. And you said that, it was taken up really well. Even though you'd been doing daily practice with Virtuosity for months at that point, this kind of hit home. And it's to the point where we do want character development to be daily, but just doing it on your own isolated, chipping away at these habits can be not as rewarding. So what are the kind of other support systems we can create to make it mission critical? Can you walk us through how you decided to do this behavioral forecasting piece, and maybe just briefly describing what behavioral forecasting is and how you brought it to your team, because it sounded like it went really well?
Yeah, it was super interesting. And how we got there, and there's a link to the strategies, the specific 7 strategies that you use in Virtuosity that we've learned throughout the year. So, but I mean, how the idea even came to be was through Mary just continuing to collaborate with us on some ideas that she had for the Forbes articles that she writes. And she decided to share an earlier draft of the cognitive warfare article with me and a couple other folks. And this had been after the point where we had learned behavioral forecasting through the Virtuosity program. So it just spurred a few dots to connect in my brain as far as, hey, well, if we're talking about cognitive warfare, that really obviously resonates with me. How can we use leader character framework as an external to self-development tool for something else? And that's where we, instead of having the, which is still obviously a valid way to use it, but instead of just using this as the difficult conversation, supervisor subordinate type thing, which, obviously happens in the military as well and is very useful for that purpose, we thought about, well, how could we use this as a way to shape strategic engagement between senior military leaders? So that led us to that was sort of coming together and gelling in my brain at the same time as we talked about as a leadership team about shifting our annual get together, which has largely been based on some administrative and sort of national requirements that we have to accomplish every year. Also very important as far as getting together and building the connection with the team, because we are a distributed group, in ensuring we're solid in our Canadian identity, and we've got, we're able to connect at a person-to-person level at least once throughout the year as a team here, and we go out and we visit folks. But this idea of, okay, I wanted to bring a little bit more rigor and structure to that event. So that all kind of smashed together, and it's like, hey, well, we ought to, what we're actually doing here, I think, is an exercise, and it may be a sort of a command post exercise, as we call it, where it's a thinking exercise. And it's not actual equipment and things moving around. We just gathered around, the proverbial table, and we tackle problems together in the context of a scenario. So that sort of snowballed as I was brought in the team, and we started talking through this. That sort of evolved into, well, we in the context of where we work for all of our team, we work distributedly for the U.S. Space Force and U.S. Space Command as part of their teams. So we're embedded with them. So our chosen domain is the space domain, which is a challenging operating domain in and of itself. We wanted to be able to kind of, in the context of how we plan to use coalition forces for operations in the space domain, we wanted to use that context because it's actually what we're doing. So we wanted to make sure there was some realism with how it wasn't complete, pixies and fairy dust land. Like this is actually a realistic way in which we were going to conduct operations as a coalition. So we layered although notional but realistic structure over top of our exercise for the week. And because we are Canadians in America, we get together once a year. We dub the exercise Maple Recharge, so that we are able to assert our Canadianness as part of a coalition, which is why you have coalitions, to bring different perspectives and different streams of thought and so on, and bring some diversity of military culture to the group. So that's part of one of the reasons why we get together as well. So in order to in our because of the work that we're doing in leader character, that all kind of smashed together again to be like, okay, well, we have access to a Canadian senior leader where we are here on the West Coast, who's also an exchange officer like we are. We have this context that we've now created. Let's use behavioral forecasting to prepare our senior leader, Brigadier General, for an engagement with his superior. And we will use the different size bubbles for behavioral forecasting, for the two counterparts, where we decided as the runners of the exercise to provide the leader character assessment in the bubble format to the team. We didn't want them to have to come up with that, because we only had so much time, and that's too much too soon. So we provided them with that, and we brought yourself in to teach behavioral forecasting to the team. As unideal as it was to have you talk into a screen that didn't have another camera on the other side, you came through like a champ and delivered that to the team, and it was great. And then we also wanted to apply some other sort of tools that are out there for doing analysis. So we brought in another colleague within the defense team and Virtuosity course mate, to Christian Breed, who was the very first episode of this podcast, to help us learn the SWOT analysis method. And then we sort of coupled those two things together to be able to, at the end of the week, give a strategic engagement preparation brief to our senior leader. And people were freaking out. I think I was freaking out a little bit too. We were, because we were asking ourselves to do something we've never done before. We definitely pushed all of us outside of our comfort zones. But I was just so impressed and proud of the team with what they came out with by the end of the day on Thursday. And it led to a couple, unexpected but maybe not surprising outcomes that at the end of the week. So I mean, ultimately, it did provide it didn't end up being a very rich and useful conversation with our senior leader. He found it super useful, and I would love to have had more of this throughout his career up until this point, and as a way to prepare for, sometimes the barrage of engagements that they get peppered with as a senior leader. And I'm sure that's not unique to the military, but there's a robust engagement schedule depending on the thing you're attending. And this would have helped, was sort of his initial feedback. The second thing that it did, which was a little bit, surprising, not surprising, and then connecting it to some of the strategies, is it really was like rocket fuel on the language strategy. When you're actually having to use, because what we also provided the team, I didn't mention before, we gave them the Virtues and Vices Index as sort of these are the tools you have to solve the problem. You're getting the bubble chart of the behavioral forecasting character assessment. You're getting the Virtues and Vices Index. You're getting a SWOT. Here's the stuff on the table. Go make the air filter work and the Apollo capsule kind of thing. So we that was having that activity as an external way to access leader character content was just an incredibly helpful at becoming familiar with the language. The extent to which you pick away at it, kind of like you were suggesting, when you're doing this on your own, there's only so many conversations you have in your head or with your partner, if you have a partner through Virtuosity. There's only so many like actual times you say the 62 words that are in, 62 times 3, I guess, if you use the excess and deficient vices words as well. There's only so many times you can use those words. But when you're using this as the tool to solve a problem, you're saying the words a lot. So over the sessions, the dedicated times that we had in our week to get together as syndicates and solve the problem, it was an incredible boost in our language strategy, and really I found helpful for all of us to really accelerate our familiarity with the language. And as we've talked about lots, and as a lot of folks know, once you have the words to describe what you're trying to describe, then I mean, it just gets so much easier at that point, where you can actually talk about what you are trying to talk about once you have the words for it. So that's probably the strategy that we've had the best success with so far, through having used the behavioral forecasting activity as a means. And it wasn't how we didn't set off to do it that way necessarily in the first place, but it's like, oh, holy smokes, that was actually an awesome thing to use under language strategy, as it turns out.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's such a perfect example of how the language strategy can be used effectively. Like if you're just memorizing these terms for whatever reason, it's not going to be super motivating. Why? And so we often think about, the broad kind of terms around developing character, around, understanding yourself, understanding other people, but you're elevating it to a whole other level when you use the words like mission critical, when you're actually having people solve a problem that is really important to them. And in your shared context, it's brilliant. So we're gonna keep bringing that to other contexts and programs. Are there any other strategies that you found really useful that you wanted to share?
Well, we've definitely, whether it's useful or not, remains to be seen. I think one of the ones that jumps to mind though is the exemplar strategy, where we are trying to be, as is a staple of military leadership, we're trying to lead by example. So we're not just standing on from our perch as the leadership team or the commanding officer and saying, do this. We are also doing it. So it was super important for me to be with the team and doing this for the team. And also, as I've described earlier, for myself as well. So we've attempted at least to offer an exemplar aspect to the strategy through this. And whether, I don't necessarily expect that everybody's going to find that meaningful or to them, but the fact that we're doing it just as much as everybody else is doing it is certainly aligned with, leading by example. And we continue to work hard at doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And for anyone that is listening that's not familiar with these strategies, we're talking about the 7 strategies for character development that's research really coming out of the Oxford Character Project and Wake Forest University. So I'll link those in the show notes. And I think, that exemplar is one. It can be used in so many ways, but I really think this idea of it coming from the leadership team top down, like showing that it doesn't just apply to everyone else but me, but that you're actually investing in it in yourself. And then you have that language continuity too, is so important. Before we press on, I just want to make sure, are there any other strategies that you wanted to share, or I wanted to ask you more about the character required of yourself to lead this. So yeah, any other strategies you want to talk on, or do you want to press on?
The language and exemplars are kind of the 2 that we have the most, I guess, reps with yet. I think looking forward to, as we approach in the new year is sort of the halfway point of our, affiliate Virtuosity program. The, systems strategy, the reminders strategy, and habituation are sort of the 3 that come to mind as ones we want to try and crack the nut on. I think we really hit a good boost with the language as we described. We're going to continue to try and be exemplars ourselves, but I think we can also bring in external exemplars and that our brains were spinning on that from a couple of days ago when we were at the Leader Character Conference together, and we got to hear from other sectors and other individuals who are sort of in the trenches with us on this in their own context. I think exemplars from other areas would be really beneficial to the team. But and again, like I carried on about earlier, for the habit forming, habituation is going to be an important one for us to keep front of mind and continue to try and crack the nut on. And some of the reminders, I mean, I've personally tried to continue to dabble with that as different ways to have things jump out of the bushes at me to remember to do virtuosity at the end of the day. So that's something that we will try and share lessons and tips and tricks sort of thing amongst ourselves for that. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it moving forward, as we sort of carry with us some successes we've had so far with some of the strategies and look to expand and grow a little bit in some others.
Yeah, and that systems one I think is a really interesting one to explore. The quote that I love from Atomic Habits by James Clear: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so what are some of the kind of root level practices you could put in place that make the habit piece a little bit more easier, more supported? So it'd be interesting to brainstorm some of those ideas with you later. But yeah, so thinking now to you and perhaps even your team, as you've tried to pioneer this effort. I love Mary's language. She usually talks about things in terms of their degree of difficulty, thinking about it like a dive. And she says you can either cannonball it to the water, the degree of difficulty is quite low, or you can do this elaborate dive into the water. And what you guys are doing is a high degree of difficulty around many forms. The paradigm shift of elevating character alongside competence is already challenging enough. Going beyond the temporary bump, so not just workshopping this, but actually making this a daily practice, adds another element of challenge. Trying to make this mission critical because you have mandated this program is another level of difficulty. And then the fact that this is a pioneering effort. So you've got a lot stacked against you. As you've invested in your own character development over the last year, what have you found has this initiative demanded from you in terms of your character to be able to do this well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And whether this ends up in a belly flop or a rip entry is still time will tell. Which is kind of part of the, like, we're on the 1,000-meter platform here, spinning and twisting, and this may still end up in a belly flop at the end of the bottom of the tower, but which is part of the trick and the challenge, tying it back to habituation and just habit change in general, is like it's the trusting the process for this is difficult because of when you will expect to see results is so much further down the line. And we talked about this on our panel at the conference a couple of days ago, where we're investing. This is a long-term investment, so we're expecting to see results in on the scale of years, not weeks or months. So with that in mind, I think I've really had to lean in on transcendence to keep, when you don't get immediate results or a sort of instant gratification, being future oriented, optimistic and creative. And we definitely have come at this with a purpose. We've really had to lean on that to be able to, to stick with it. And drive as well. Like we have to, we're striving for excellence here. Like we've described it, excellence in leadership, because it's what we need in today's. We've always needed it, but it's especially for our moment in the world and for Canada and for the Canadian Armed Forces, it's needed more than ever. So striving for excellence has been a big sort of banner for us. We've had to bring in a lot of initiative. There's a lot of layers of the organization between where we sit in the broader structure of the Canadian Armed Forces and where the direction, if you will, to do this in our ethos and doctrine sits. So there's a lot of echelons of a bureaucratic organization like the military between that and us. So there's nobody, telling me exactly what to do or how to do it. We have broad intent laid out in foundational documents, and we're using that to close gaps in what we see as a way to, as a mission critical way to increase operational advantage. So I mean, we have to be driven for this, or it wouldn't happen. And really, I mean, I could probably talk for another hour just going around the entire wheel to really, because there's so many things that I've had to, that are applicable here. But I've over the last couple of probably 5 or so years, I've done turns out I was doing a lot through other development initiatives to increase my collaboration, my humanity, and my humility. So I was able to. So we needed to do this collaboratively. Within, which is interesting, always interesting to be when you're trying to be highly collaborative within the context of a hierarchy and a chain of command and an org chart. So I always run up against that, despite in my brain, I really want like hyper collaboration, but I also acknowledge that because of the positional, baggage that comes with being, in my role and at my rank within the context of the military and the hierarchy, that there are impediments to collaboration that you have to work through. So that's caused me to think through that and to have to be creative, to tie back to transcendence in order to be able to do that and to be flexible within collaboration to achieve that as well. We kind of already mentioned earlier, seems like 2 hours ago now, about humility, because I said so many words, but the humility aspect of this, because we are as much on the journey with the team as they are on this as well. And my humanity has also had to be present to consider all of the challenges, what I'm asking people to do, and being aware and empathetic to the situation that they're in, to be able to to support them going through what I'm asking them to do, and for what I'm doing for myself as well. But none of that, again, to borrow back from Mary's explanation of temperance when we were in that session a few months ago. It's like none of that would be possible without the calm and the patience and the composure to access those other dimensions through temperance. And then for me personally, like I again described earlier, the keyhole perhaps to the portal of temperance for me is vigorous. So I won't be able to access the patience and the calm, both cognitively, psychologically and physiologically, if I don't have strong, vigorous, behavior under control. So that's like that's a bit of a, thinking through what we've done and what I've had to do in my role, and how we've had to lead this as a team. That's my sort of initial walk through the park of the character wheel and what we've had to access to be able to do it.
Yeah, that all resonates. I love how you pretty much just went around the wheel. All of these character dimensions are so important, and the vigor piece is also a portal for me too. Like if you don't have sleep, nutrition, exercise, how do you even imagine anything else? And I found like also being in a kind of pioneering role, I'm always surprised at how much more transcendence is possible, how much more transcendence is needed to be able to paint a vision, to be able to get people inspired by it. And that muscle just
Hmm.
needs to continue to be challenged. And you said something earlier too around you're kind of committed to this for the long term, and it won't be a while till you see results. But at the same time, I think that there are small and significant results quite quickly.
Hmm.
And so if you think about some of those, and I think sometimes because you're building such small habits over time, it does take some reflection to look back and see what is changing. And so when you think about just your personal experience in the Virtuosity program, are there one or two insights that stands out for you that has been impactful that you can see in the immediate?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, I think thinking through the transcendence piece of trying to shift, an organization to have stronger character and more balanced character, that's probably more along the years than days or weeks. But yeah, I know I do agree with you. There are smaller wins that we personally may go through, um, as you do your daily development, and that's where this framework, once you have it, and to use the glasses analogy that we were taught earlier in the program, like this gives me this is looking through my life and through what I have done and what I'm doing through the character goggles. It's I can see that, okay, well, that makes sense then why I have a collaborative nature, because I've been a musician my whole life, and I've played in bands, and so it really, that aspect of when we talked about collaboration and even judgment for that matter, when you're talking about the orchestra, and if everybody just played their part and didn't care what everybody else was doing, then it's just noise. So, and that's not how you play in a band. So I didn't know it when I was 14, but I was learning collaboration from an early age. So that was one that where you can look back now and say, okay, well, maybe that's how I ended up here. And now that you can also use then the goggles to look forward, to be able to say, hey, I will continue to do this. It's not only just for fun that I still want to play music, but maybe this legitimately is having an impact on my character development for me to continue to want to play music in bands, and connect with people that way. I think, thinking about, this conversation over the last couple of, well, thinking about this conversation for the whole year, because I think, well, yes, probably signed up for this in February or something. But not knowing what I would talk about in February till now, um, I think there has been, an increase in temperance, although probably still a lot of work to do. But that really was when we talked about it as a portal to access the other ones, it's just that really stuck with me and I think I have moved the needle a little bit on that, personally. There's still work to be done for sure. But it also, connecting it to judgment, I don't necessarily always have the patience I need in the moment, but I become more quickly situationally aware of what I just did, so I can more quickly seek to resolve it instead of being oblivious to what I had done and wondering why everything's on fire behind me. So there's definitely a connection between patience and calm and situationally aware for me that is I aspire to be more in front of, but at least maybe or on the back end I can be more aware of, and shorten the time to realize what the heck I actually just did and why it wasn't helpful, and then adjust. So yeah, I think it's being able to think through leadership challenges throughout this year that I've dealt with and that I currently continue to deal with. I mean, there's a reason these positions are challenging, right? We're given tough problems to solve and not a lot of answers. And I couldn't, I'm very thankful that I have this framework and this rubric to sort of think through and prepare for conversations, and to be able to use these tools to develop myself, to help develop my team. As we approach the time of Thanksgiving in the U.S., where we're all living, I've been very thankful for this throughout this year, because it has absolutely been a pleasure to work with this, and to work with you and Mary on this. So
Oh, that's awesome. And so the yeah, the as we are kind of winding down, I will turn it over to you in a second just to make sure that we've covered everything that you wanted to. But the question that I typically end by asking everyone is about their character quotient. So the character quotient is something that Mary and I put together, which is around the degree to which you're bringing character into really kind of everything that you do. And it's categorized into 3 categories. One around what's your character awareness, the second one around how much are you developing your character, and the third one, the degree to which you're applying it in your organization, your place of work. Did you get a chance to take that character quotient? I didn't check with you before we jumped on. Did you get a chance to take it? And if you did, do you want to walk us through what you scored on it?
Yeah, no, I definitely, I did have a crack at it,
Okay.
and I think I did it wrong because it's a lot higher than it probably should be. But maybe I was in a good mood or feeling super stoked on character because we just had the conference and everything.
Oh, you are doing a lot too, so don't worry about it being higher than you think it should be. But yeah, walk us through it and
Yeah, so
let us know what you're happy with or areas that you want to work on.
the overall the total score came out to 89%. And that broke down to awareness 92.5, development 85, and application 90. And I think so. I mean, and I think that generally makes sense. I feel like, through our, initially starting with Virtuosity and then layering on top of that our own Virtuosity. I've had, double time this year to gain awareness. Now that doesn't, awareness doesn't mean I'm doing it right. It just means I'm admiring the problem perhaps more acutely than I would have been last year. So what I do about it is kind of where that's more interesting and compelling than just saying I'm 92.5% aware. That's interesting, but what's the compelling part? I'm not sure. So that's where I, in describing how I am situationally aware of the times I don't have temperance, like that's cool, but I'd rather have enough temperance to not have to fix problems and just, not react, react in a more productive way. So awareness is, I think, not surprisingly, higher just because of how much we've, how much we dove into this. The development piece as well, that was 85%. And I think we are also actively, I'm actively participating in Virtuosity, so developing myself, and we're also working on developing the team. So perhaps that's not surprising as well that we're doing a lot to develop character in many different facets. And I've seen other opportunities in other areas of my responsibilities, not just in the unit commanding officer context, where I've been dabbling in other aspects of character development and application for that matter. So application and development were sort of similar in score. So I can't, the way I think about this is I can't unsee what I've seen for character now. So the more I look in areas, I can't not see it through the lens of character now. So I'm like, I think that would be useful over here. And I think we could try this over here. So it's just been a really like a snowballing effect of different areas where I have responsibility and perhaps influence that I'm trying to introduce leader character into those processes or into the development for different aspects of the Canadian Armed Forces. So, and all the while, it's just so helpful to have that high level guidance and intent from our ethos and leadership doctrine that it's literally in there. So I'm not like we don't have to decide if we're choosing this at my level. Our higher headquarters has already chosen it for us. So now it's just a matter of taking that and running with it and trying to close gaps as quickly as we can. And that's definitely kept me occupied. And it's why I think my application score was also kind of high. So yeah, so I mean, it's been really exciting to be able to do that. And I think I'm super proud of the team for embarking on this with us. And it's been like I said, it's been a fantastic collaboration with Parent Virtuosity for our affiliate Virtuosity program. So yeah, I think there's still lots of work to do. I'm not, the 89% score doesn't, it doesn't capture, what's beyond awareness. So that's just the first step. So I can confidently say I'm at the start line for character development. So where we go from there, I guess, remains to be seen as we continue to, go down the path.
Well, it's a very strong start line. And I think that number that you have is spot on. It is just incredible, all the things that you guys are doing. And I did want to just pick up on the one thing too that you said. You had mentioned it earlier, and I forgot to point it out. Having a character in your ethos is something that you've said is helpful time and time again. And when you think about that, it's really that system strategy. Like, what are the things that we can put in place that make everything else easier? And so for those that are listening that don't have character in their ethos, it is thinking about what are the ways that you can actually kind of bake it into your systems more effectively that make everyone else's job easier to be able to kind of leverage and push that. So that is just something really amazing that obviously your context has. So what haven't we talked about? Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you've had on your mind that you wanted to share before we close things down?
My gosh, yeah, we've covered a lot, for sure. A couple of other, I guess, guideposts that I've used throughout this year, or the other resources I've collected through doing Virtuosity and through trying to lead Virtuosity with our team, has really been some banner sort of quotes that have been really helpful. So using, and one of the stages I enjoy the most is activation, when you get to pick music and you get to pick, quotes and stories and places and all that stuff to really activate character. And that for me, just, again, it was like things that you are already in your life, probably, or like quite likely that you just now you're just collecting all of these things within the character development universe, even though you already listen to music and you already read books and you already go to places that are meaningful to you. So now it's just seeing it all through that context. But one of the things that is the quotes that I've carried with me, and I've started to collect them throughout the year. And the highest among them was the Viktor Frankl one that we've used a few times now, is between stimulus and response, there's a space, and that space is our power to choose our response, and our response lies our growth and our freedom. So trying to build the space is sort of is why I'm super excited about what's in that space, and what can we do once we have that space. And again, I've already talked about, what got me here won't get me there. So I keep that in front of mind as well. And then specific to some other perhaps traditionally or stereotypically lower dimensions for military organizations, under humanity and humility, I think a lot about Maya Angelou, and people don't care about what you know until they know how much you care. It is maybe not popularly thought, but it is something we do actually talk a lot about, is how much we care for people and ways in which we can care for people. So I keep that front of mind as well. And within humility is how much larger your life would be if yourself could become smaller in it, by G.K. Chesterton, excuse me. So that is a powerful one for me, that just really, it's one of those lightning bolt sort of moments in your brain where I'm like, wow, yeah, that's really important to not get too big for your britches. So yeah, I mean, so those are kind of my I guess closing thoughts. And people way smarter than me and way more insightful than me came up with them, but that's, using what has been put out there laid in front of us for Virtuosity and other areas, just collecting this resource of meaningful, for me, meaningful quotes that really start to to bring me back to why this is important, and to keep, and to understand that it's actually developing character through keeping these as sort of guideposts throughout the journey.
Oh, I love that. While we have so much science like baked into the process, we really do draw on those arts, and like stuff like music and quotes can be so powerful. So I love that you brought us back to that really inspirational place to land this off. That's a great way to wrap everything up. So thank you so much, Phil, for not just joining us today on the podcast, but all of the pioneering efforts that you have been brave enough to do, bring along your team, the collaborative nature. You haven't done this alone. So it really is inspiring for us to keep doing the work that we're doing too. So we're just really thankful for all your efforts. So thanks for everything that you're doing.
And thanks to you too, Corey. It's been fun, and will continue to be fun. Thanks for the opportunity to chat with you today.
You have just finished another episode from the Virtuosity podcast. If you have any questions and want to connect, please reach out to me at corey@virtuositycharacter.ca. I'm also on LinkedIn, so let's connect. As always, thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.